Hey friend, Chris here from Logic Pro Rules, the website and channel that helps you get the most you can out of Apple's Logic Pro. Today, I want to help you get started with free tempo recording in Logic. Now, free tempo recording is this amazing feature that allows you to forget the metronome, forget session players, loops, all that stuff. You just hit record, you lay down your idea, and Logic Pro will figure out your tempo that you're performing at on the fly. It creates a beat map essentially and will load it into your project. This is amazing. Now, last week I discussed why I think most of us should be recording alongside drummer, basically so you have a consistent tempo without the stress and intimidation of trying to play alongside a metronome. But today's video is a little more advanced for those of us who just want to get the idea out and just have everything else figure itself out to your idea. Let's dig into it. All right, on screen, I've already loaded a track with Sample Alchemy, and I've loaded the Big String Plucks preset, which can be found under the Plucked presets. And this is what it sounds like. What I plan to do is record an idea without any sort of timing reference, and I'm going to play an arpeggiated idea. But instead of using an arpeggiator, so instead of holding just a chord down and letting the arpeggiator do the work, I'm using the Novation Launch Key Mark IV, which has this really cool feature of applying a chord map to the different drum pads, but it also allows me to arpeggiate through the notes of a chord by holding down another drum pad that's in orange. So I'm not just holding down a chord, I'm instead going to be rapidly pressing on the chord so it cycles through the different notes. So a slightly more complicated scenario, hopefully free tempo recording will pick up on my tempo variations. Let me close Sample Alchemy. Right up in the control bar, we see the button for free tempo recording. It looks like a record button with a dash circle around it. If you don't see this in your version of Logic Pro, of course you can customize the control bar and display to either hide or show free tempo recording. All right, so I'm going to press record and just start jamming out my notes. Once I stop playback, I get this pop-up for free tempo recording. Logic wants to know what do I want it to do in relation to this region and its tempo. And I want Logic Pro to apply the region tempo, meaning my performance tempo that I performed at, to the project. Let's give it a try. All right, so some changes have occurred. We don't know exactly what has occurred until we open the global track lanes so that we can see the tempo track lane. If you don't see this, right-click or hold Control and click to reveal or hide again any section. So it's clear that as I performed this idea, my hand got tired. I slowed down. I also intentionally slowed down so we could see more tempo variations. Let's hear how close Logic Pro actually is in its tempo mapping. I would say Logic Pro has done a great job. It's averaging tempo, so it's not doing beat by beat. It's just averaging over the performance. And as you can see in here, I really slowed down towards the end and it picked up on that. Perfect. So maybe I'm happy with these changes in tempo. I actually prefer to keep them. I want everything else to adapt to these changes. Let's start loading some session players and see how they adapt. So I'm going to load an instance of drummer with the synth pop drummer style. I will reduce the length of this drummer region, so it's just the 4 bars I performed. Let's take a listen. That's pretty awesome. I mean, essentially drummer is MIDI, and MIDI relies on the tempo for, where these notes should be placed. And if I make any sort of variation, it just adapts, both my performance and drummer. But don't worry, we'll dig into audio momentarily. Next up, I want to load an instance of bass player. But before I load bass player, I'm going to need to load some chords in the global track so bass player knows what to perform. So let's go to the chord global track, press the plus button to load a chord. And a beautiful thing about the chord track is if we go right down here, there's an option for MIDI input. So I could just press the chord button on my Novation Launch Key Mark IV to input that chord. Oh, I have the drummer track selected. Let me just click up And let's input it again just so we can hear the chord. Okay, clearly it's in C. Next, I'm going to press Tab to load the next chord. Perfect. I'll press Tab again. And one more. Now, interesting, on the launch key itself, it says that's a G major chord. So I'm just going to apply G major. All right, we're ready to go. I'm just going to shrink up this chord so it matches our 4 bars. And let's now load an instance of bass player. And I'm going to load the indie disco patch. All right, let's trim this up. And let's take a listen. Sounds pretty good. I prefer a synth patch for the bass as opposed to a bass guitar. So let's pop open the library, go under synthesizer to bass, and I'll choose, I think, the Alien Pulse Bass. I can tell you right now that is way too low for this bass. So let's close the library, open the editor, and I'll set the lowest note here to E2. And I might want to reduce the amount of octaves to none or some. Let's give it a try. I'm not digging those octaves. Let's just get rid of them. All right, I think that's pretty good. So now we have my MIDI performance, drummer, bass player. I'm going to bounce bass player in place. This way I have an audio region to play with and not just MIDI. Okay, so I'm building up my riff. I'm happy with the riff, but I've decided, you know what? I want to set everything to a consistent tempo just because it's going to make life so much easier as I fill out the arrangement. You know, if I go on for 3.5, 4 minutes, do I have to copy and paste these tempo changes again and again and again? I'd prefer not. So looking at, again, the tempo here starts at 89.4 and then goes down. I prefer to keep it around 90. So let me open the list editors in the upper right-hand corner. And right here we have several lists, one of which is the tempo list. And I'm going to remove a lot of these tempo variations. So from 87.63 and down, I'm just going to hold Shift and click to select them all, and I'm going to press Delete. I'm also going to double click and set this to a consistent 90 beats per minute. So I don't even need 120 anymore. We're at 90. Let's take a listen to how this sounds. Now, if you are listening closely, the drums and the synth are lockstep with the tempo. It sounds great. The only problem is the audio region here for bass player is not following the tempo, which is a problem. Lucky for us, Logic Pro has a solution. So let's close the list editors and let's select the bass player region and go up to the region inspector and go to flex and follow and turn this from off to on. And look at that, some changes have occurred. Because flex is in view here, we're able to see the tempo changes marked by these blue markers that Logic has committed to the bass region. Logic embeds tempo information into audio regions and files so that if we need to adapt the tempo, it can. So if we take a listen from bar 2, it sounds great. And if I get rid of the single tempo node, I can go as high or as low as I need to in terms of BPM. If I go down, maybe there. And everything just works. It's awesome. Now, if you are importing audio from outside of Logic Pro, so it's not in the project that it was created, you're importing from outside, you may want to go to this section that says keep tempo. It's right under the beats per minute, and go to Smart Tempo Project Settings. And you may want to set imported files to on. Basically, turn flex and follow on for those imported files, so as you drag them in, they just adapt to the tempo of the project. Logic Pro should analyze the tempo and figure it all out for you. And of course, you can use flex to make further edits if you want to tighten the timing up further. Maybe I want this to land right here, right on with the grid. You can edit with flex, just show flex, and then you can grab these transient markers and move them. And maybe I want to clean up the performance timing of my actual performance. So I'll go to the piano roll, hold Command, press A to select all the notes, and press Q to quantize them. Keep in mind though, if we take a look at the front edge, this note has been quantized to bar 2, and the region start comes after the beginning of the note. So if you take a listen, we missed the first note. So I need to take this region boundary and extend it to bar 2 to reveal the note here in the tracks area. Right? If I undo, we see the note, but we're missing the front edge. Check it out. Booyah, there's our performance. We're able to use free tempo recording, apply other tracks, mess around, and then even adjust the tempo after the fact. And I walked you through how to deal with some of those issues when it comes to audio, MIDI, etc. Be sure to check out the description below as well, because I'll include links to last week's video, some other videos about smart tempo if you want a deeper dive into these subjects. Thanks so much, and I'll check in for more next week. Take care.